What's up, investors? It's the Russian dude. So, what happens when a man who has spent decades marketing himself as Russia's supreme guardian suddenly gets exposed as somebody who cannot keep any of his promises? Vladimir Putin has based his entire career on convincing people he's the only one stopping Russia from sinking into chaos. These are his almost exact words. But instead of chaos, he said that Russia without him would have been on the edge of the abyss. For a while, it worked. Most Russians, beaten down by hard life and brainwashed by state propaganda, believed he could keep them safe. But today, we are witnessing the collapse of that so-called protector image, piece by piece. Countless attacks in Moscow prove that Putin cannot guard even the capital. And Ukraine's incursion into Russia itself? Well, Russian military was not able to prevent Ukrainians from crossing the border. What's even worse, for almost 5 months, they cannot take them out. And the response they decided to do? Well, completely to ignore the situation. Not just the presence of a foreign army on Russian soil, but the struggles and cries for help of residents of these regions as well. Without a doubt, Putin will never get a vote from the residents of Kursk anymore. But there are thousands other people all across Russia who see that in the times when people needed help the most, the regime simply abandoned them. Where are the guarantees that the same fate will not happen to them? Now, with more Russians than ever questioning his competence, the question is whether his disillusionment can lead for a full-blown civil war. Because it is not just the regular people who are dissatisfied. A lot of members of Putin's inner circle are furious with him as well. Take Elvira Nabiulina, for example. So today, let's break down the carefully orchestrated myth, see how it is going to fall apart, potentially, and figure out whether Russia is truly on the brink of tearing itself apart from within. Putin's decline started with a series of events that were supposed to demonstrate his strength, but ended up highlighting his weaknesses instead. We saw the very first signs of it back in 2002. Moscow theater hostage crisis, when he tried to play it off like he was taking decisive action, but only revealed how shaky his power structure really was. The whole operation showed that Putin is no longer the big boss who keeps everyone safe. And then there was the most recent 2024 Crocus City Hall attack, and once again, the response of Putin was almost non-existent. How such a big and popular place, right in the capital of Russia, can be left without any protection, and it took almost an hour for a response group to arrive and do something. The FSB is proficient at finding a teenager who left a like under Freedom of Russia Legion post on Instagram, but they cannot prevent a full-scale attack right under Putin's nose. To say that this is a personal responsibility and flaw of Putin himself is to say nothing. For a guy who built his reputation on fear and intimidation, losing that aura of invincibility is the worst case scenario. He is used to bullying journalists, belittling them with sarcastic remarks about their jewelry, or shutting them down with random attacks, so that no one ever questions him again. What a big man, right? The president of Russia talks down a 21-year-old student of a journalistic university. Putin must be really proud of himself once he gets home, looking in the mirror and saying, "I showed that chump who's the boss, that's right." But recently he has had to navigate genuine opposition, including from the members of his inner circle, simply because people no longer buy his chest-thumping narratives. Think about it. If he cannot prevent attacks in Moscow or keep Ukrainian forces from breaching the border, why would Russians trust him to defend the nation? Others might have thought that, okay, he cannot protect us because it is hard to predict such attacks, but surely he will help us deal with the consequences, right? Right? Many believed he could wave a magic wand and fix everything, but this wand seems broken. Putin's strongman act is quickly fading, revealing he does not have the grip on power he claims to. The only reason, at least for now, why he is still ruling unchallenged, is because people of Russia got used to this sort of stability. Who else if not Putin? This might be one of the most popular questions among the population. And once that illusion of stability cracks, it will be almost impossible for Putin to glue it back together. Now, let's quickly talk about Kursk once again. Putin might ignore what's happening there, but we cannot. This region became the stage for a Ukrainian incursion in August 2024, where battalions crossed into Russia like it was not a big deal at all. They seized hundreds of square miles, and Putin's forces still have not reclaimed that territory months later. The Kremlin tried to spin it, saying that invading groups were just small groups of insurgents, but the real numbers were significantly higher. And meanwhile, people of Kursk had to flee, leaving the world to wonder how the supposed protector of Russia let foreign forces walk in unchallenged. And then there are drone strikes in Moscow, which caused significant damage and even took the life of a civilian. Where are the air defenses? People seriously ask these questions. More rhetorically, obviously, not expecting the Ministry of Defense to reveal the exact locations on the map. But the positions of some of them are publicly known information. Many Russia's air defense systems that are not in Ukraine are stationed near Putin's dachas and other his favorite objects. For example, the ones in Sochi or in Krasnodar, hundreds of kilometers away from the front lines or any combat activity. So they just literally sit there, collect dust, while the capital of Russia is under attack once-twice per month. It is not just bad PR, it's a direct hit on Putin's credibility. For someone who spent years boasting that Russia's might is unmatched, failing to defend the capital is humiliating. If he cannot keep drones away from the seat of his power, it raises a dangerous for him question. Does he have any meaningful control left? This fiasco has fueled the argument that we are watching, a slow-motion destruction of his regime. Rising casualty numbers, endless fighting in Ukraine, and now the war stepping into Russia's own backyard. None of it aligns with the myth of a leader who is always one step ahead of any threat. And none of the responses he attempted to do yielded any meaningful results. He tried bringing North Koreans, total failure. He tried to present Bakhmut as the single most important victory, similar to Stalingrad battle during the Second World War. Well, people forgot where Bakhmut is on the map 1 week later. He tried to brute force his way into fixing the economy by flooding it with money. Well, the inflation and the interest rates reach double-digit numbers. It seems that whatever Putin tries to fix, it only gets worse. Here is where things escalate. The idea that Russia might slide into civil war no longer seems like a conspiracy theory. It might not happen tomorrow, in a week, or not even in a month. The regime seems relatively stable right now. But do you remember what happened in Syria? Less than a month ago, the regime fell completely. It happened in a matter of weeks. And it also came seemingly out of nowhere. The Assad family that ruled Syria for 53 years evaporated without a trace. I mean, sure, he's in Moscow, but you get the idea. And nobody cares about this lost half century anymore. The change of power happened quickly, the dictator fled, and are now left with nothing, living the rest of his life in exile, fearing every day for his life. Putin ruled Russia only for 24 years, and yes, there were 4 years of Medvedev, but we all know who was really in power. Assad family ruled twice longer, and the situation was as stable as it now seems in Russia, and yet, we all know what happened in early December. So coming back to the original question, can a civil war happen in Russia in the future? The answer is absolutely yes. Russia is a very big country with many regions, including the unstable ones such as Chechnya. And do you think Chechens, whose independence was taken by Russians throughout both Chechen wars, will sit and do nothing once the unrests begin? I highly doubt it. They will most likely be among the first ones to go against Putin, with Kadyrov leading his personal army against his former boss. Then some more distant regions will join the rebellion, regions like Tuva or Komi, where Putin relentlessly recruited people to be slaughtered in Ukraine. The regions where almost every single family is now affected by war, because they lost either a husband, a brother, or a son. They will most certainly want to ask Putin some very uncomfortable questions. And then there are obviously neighboring regions with Ukraine, such as Kursk and Belgorod, who got abandoned by Putin. Why they shouldn't go on the streets and protest the president? Did he do anything good for them? Maybe, yes, long time in the past. But did he do something horrible to them recently? Yes, absolutely. And we obviously cannot forget Putin's inner circle. Putin rose to power by strong arming oligarchs and turning them into allies who owed him everything. But as the Ukrainian war drags on, the very same oligarchs now see their fortunes crumble under the sanctions and an imploding Russian economy. Some have started to question him openly, calling the war barbaric or demanding a ceasefire. And if enough power actors, wealthy oligarchs, or well-armed mercenaries decide that Putin is no longer worth their trouble, they could spark an internal conflict that regular citizens will highly likely join. Or at least they will not stop them. We saw a glimpse of that when Yevgeny Prigozhin briefly revolted in 2023. People were welcoming Wagner soldiers, not standing in front of their tanks like Putin hoped. Even the police and the National Guard were just observing, not intervening with the movement of Wagner's convoy all the way towards Moscow. So, what could push Russia over the edge? It's a combination of external and internal hits that undermine Putin's entire power structure. Externally, Ukraine keeps showing that Russia is not the unstoppable force it claimed to be. Drone attacks, territorial advances into Kursk, and the humiliation in Crimea erode Russian faith in the war effort. Internally, Putin's economy is running on borrowed time, pumping more and more money into a war machine that might collapse if or when this conflict ends. Each day that passes sees more inflation and higher interest rates, making everyday life of a nightmare for the average Russian. And meanwhile, the Kremlin's own house is also in chaos, we just don't see it. Key figures are getting reshuffled or worse, removed, quote-unquote, from the public eye whenever Putin feels threatened. That fosters resentment in people who might have the influence or resources to challenge his rule. Over time, these events can create a perfect storm, a moment when enough Russians realize their leader is not just failing in Ukraine, but failing them directly. That's the moment when unrests erupt unexpectedly, all over the country and all at once. People will no longer feel that they are alone. Putin's inner circle members, who thought that they could be the next ones to fall out of the window, will realize that this could be their best chance to turn things around and save their lives. So there will be a huge motivation obviously for them to get together and do something. The people will follow, and Putin will quickly realize that apparently he's all alone. Well, there have guys, if you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe to my channel for more videos like this. If you wish to support my work, there are links down below, for example PayPal donations, my merch at russiandude.com, and also you can become a Patreon member to receive these videos in early access, in additional chapter in the end, ridiculous Russian propaganda. All the links are down below. Thanks so much for watching, see you on Monday.
We won't succumb to their tricks, the facade they try to sell, their twisted words and feeble claims on us all they cannot quell. We see through their lies, their feeble attempts to sway. We do not believe